This is Lifetime Physical Activity and Fitness, Exercise 1000, Week 11 Core Training. First thing we're going to talk about this week is neutral positioning. Neutral positioning is very similar to anatomical alignment, and it's the most common position used as a starting position for most resistance training exercises. It's easiest to view this positioning from the side view. From the side position, you should be able to see that your chin is level with the floor. Your ears, shoulders, hips, knees, and ankles are in alignment. Your shoulders are relaxed down and back, and that your lower lumbar region has a natural curve. We shouldn't have a sway back, our hips shouldn't be tucked under, and our shoulders shouldn't be sagging. This is kind of a normal position for most people we know. This is correct neutral positioning. This is the common position, like I said, for doing exercises that are in the standing position, like a bicep curl or a squat. And from the front, you should also note that somebody standing in a neutral body position should have their feet hip-width apart. That means that you're going to find the ASIS, or anterior superior iliac spine, that bony point on the front of your hips, and place your heels directly underneath that point. Many people feel that the width of their hips is right here, so they'll often stand too wide. This puts undue stress on the body. So again, neutral body positioning. Let's begin by reviewing some of the muscles of the core. We'll start in the front with your pectoralis major and minor. They're your chest muscles, often referred to as the pecs. The motion that they produce is to contract and bring the arm inward, or horizontal adduction of the arm. You could feel them contracting if you do this, or kind of make a Hulk type motion to feel the contraction in the pectoralis muscle. Next, on the front side of the body is the rectus abdominis, or the large abdominal muscle that we're most familiar with. This is often where people get those six-pack abs. A common misconception is that there are upper and lower abdominal muscle groups to work. It is all one muscle group. It does a forward flexion motion of bringing the body curled down, rolling the spine off of the ground one vertebra at a time. Curling from the top or curling from the bottom up does the same thing, still works and engages that rectus abdominis muscle. Next is our obliques. We have external and internal obliques on each side. They work in tandem with each other. The oblique muscle does one thing. It rotates the body across. The next muscle group in the front of the body is called our transverse abdominis. It runs across the body this way, and the only thing that this muscle does is as a stabilizer, holding in our pelvic organs. A weak transverse abdominis also often results in kind of that pot-bellied look, while a strong transverse abdominis gives us a flatter bellied look. Our pelvic floor muscles are next. They're obviously the muscles deep within our pelvis that hold and pull everything up as a core stabilizer. On the back side of our body, we have our gluteal muscles, which do this motion right here by pulling the leg backwards. That's how you'll feel them contract. Up from them are our rectus spinae group, or our low back muscle groups in this area. The rectus spinae groups are the ones responsible for giving us that nice, tall, straight posture. They work in extension of the spine and hyperextension of the spine. Up higher from them are our lats, or latissimus dorsi. This muscle group basically pulls the arms down to the side during a pull-up. You'll feel them contract as you pull that elbow to the side. Next up from the lats would be our rhomboids. They pull the shoulder blades in and back towards each other, often used in a rowing motion. Up from them are our trapezius muscles, which run along this area right here. The trapezius muscle basically lifts the shoulders up and presses them down in a shrug. Finally, we have the multifidus muscle, which is another deep muscle group. It runs along the spinal column, keeping those spinal vertebrae in alignment. Now we're going to begin with our 3 warm-up exercises that are to be completed after your 5 to 10 minute aerobic warm-up. These exercises are used to warm up the areas of the chest, the rib cage, the spine, and the pelvic girdle prior to performing our 8 core exercises. Our first exercise is called cat-cow. We're going to start in an all-fours position with our hands directly underneath our shoulders and our knees underneath our hips and a flat tabletop back. We're going to inhale, bringing our head and our hips up, letting our spine drop down into a cow position, and then exhale, rounding out in the opposite direction into cat. Repeating, inhaling and exhaling for the number of repetitions that are required of your group exercise prescription. Your one breath, one movement. Second exercise in our warm-up series is a cobra or up dog. To begin with, you're going to lay flat on your stomach. Let your arms rest next to your chest, but note that your arms are there just for support and not to push away. You're going to inhale as you lift up. Notice that I'm not using my arms for support, and exhale, lower down. If you feel like you could use a little bit more challenge for this exercise, you can do what's called an up dog on your inhale. Where you press all the way up until the only things on the floor are your hands and the tops of your feet. I'll shake to show you that I'm not touching the mat, but don't shake during this exercise. We arch our back, bringing our head up. Exhale, lower down. Or the cobra. Working at the appropriate level and completing the number of sets and repetitions that you are prescribed. The third exercise in our warm-up is a supine pelvic tilt to warm up our pelvic girdle. You're going to lay on your back, which is called the supine position, with your feet flat on the ground. Notice that as we do this, there's a small space between your back and the mat. As you inhale, I want you to roll your hips forward, making that space larger, and as you exhale, roll your pelvis backwards in order to flatten that space. Inhale forward, exhale back. Repeating the number of repetitions and sets is assigned for your group. Now we're going to do our 8 core exercises. The first exercise is the bridge, and we're going to start again in that supine position, lying on our back. There are many different variations of the bridge, so we're going to start with the most basic or standard version. You're going to lay on your back with your arms resting on your sides. Pull your heels back so that they are hip-width apart and almost directly underneath your knees. Inhale to prepare for this exercise, and as you exhale, press the weight of your body through the heels, lifting up your hips as high as you can until you have a straight line from your knee through your hip down to your shoulder. You're squeezing your gluteals during this exercise and making sure that your knees do not come together or flare out during this exercise. Inhale as you come down, exhale as you go up, repeating the required number of repetitions for your assignment. A more advanced version of this exercise is to pop the feet up onto the heels, pressing up and down, making sure that the toes never make contact with the ground. And the most advanced version of this exercise, you can choose to leave the feet up or place them down again, but extend one leg out so that it is in alignment with the other leg's knee. As you lift and lower, that leg stays in alignment with the other leg so that the hips stay flat. You don't want it to lower down as you lower or lift up as you lift. If you're doing the advanced version of this exercise, you'll need to do the same number of sets and repetitions on each side, again making sure that your leg stays even with the other leg and doesn't lift up or lower down as you move. The second core exercise we're going to do is an exercise called pike planks. If you're in the modified group or group 1, you'll be performing a different version of this exercise in which you start in a modified plank position, making sure that there's a straight line from your shoulders through your hips to your knees. As you exhale, you're going to come back into a child's pose, inhaling into that modified plank. Making sure that your hips don't sag down as you move forward. In either of the other two groups, you can perform the full pike plank by starting in a full plank position. Make sure that you have a nice straight line from your shoulders, through your hips, knees, and down to the heels. We don't want our hips to be sagging or up in the air. As you exhale, you're going to come up into a pike position, lifting the hips up, flattening out through the back and the legs, almost making a triangle with the body. As you inhale, you return back to that plank position. Repeating the number of repetitions necessary for your assignment. The third exercise in this series is a bicycle oblique. Remembering that our obliques do one thing, and that's to rotate the body. So to rotate around the spine and towards the shoulder, towards the hip. We'll start in a supine position with our feet flat on the mat. We're going to place our hands behind our head, but note that when we do this, our fingertips are not going to interlock because we don't want to be pulling on our head with our hands. For the most basic or easiest version of this exercise, we're going to do it in a 4-part exercise. The first thing we need to do is to roll our pelvis so that our back is flat against the mat. And then we're going to move. Rotate that shoulder up towards the hip, and then back down, and then the knee comes in, and then back down. Opposite side, down, knee in, down. Rotate, down, knee in, down, rotate, down, knee in, down. For the standard version of this exercise, we're going to move both the arm and leg at the same time. So rotating is we bring the knee in, but note that the goal is not the knee to the elbow, but rather the shoulder toward the hip. And then lower, opposite side. Exhale as you come up. Inhale as you lower down. Repeating the appropriate number of sets and repetitions on each side. For an advanced version of this exercise, we leave the legs up in the air. We have a 90-degree tabletop position in the knees and a 90-degree angle in the hips. Lifting up off of the mat, we maintain this nice contracted rectus abdominis position. As we rotate, we extend the opposite leg as one comes in. As we come back to the center, we again have that 90 degrees here, 90 degrees here, shoulders lifted, rectus abdominis is engaged. Repeating the number of sets and repetitions required for each side. Our next exercise in this series is a Superman twist or a prone swim. If you're in the modified group or group 1, you're going to start in that prone swim position, laying flat on your stomach with your arms extended out in front of you and your legs extended behind you. This is very much like the bird dog that we did in our last video, but it is more supported because the body is flat on the floor. As you inhale, you prepare. As you exhale, you're going to lift right arm and left leg. Then inhale as you lower. Exhale, lift left arm and right leg. Continually alternating. Until you've completed the correct number of sets and repetitions for your assignment. If you're in the standard group 2 or advanced group 3, you'll be doing the Superman with a twist. You're going to again lay with your body in the prone position or on your stomach. You're going to place your hands underneath your forehead, and as you exhale, you're going to lift up and rotate. Inhale, lower down. Exhale, lift up and rotate. If you want to make this exercise more challenging, although I'm not sure I recommend it, it's much more difficult to do this with a longer lever, so extending your arms outward to the side as you lift up and rotate, but being sure that the rotation comes from the core portions of the body and not using the posterior deltoid to move that arm back behind you. Our next exercise that we're going to perform is a scissors. So we're again going to return to our supine position on our back. But this time, after we have engaged our lower back by tipping up the pelvis and placing our lower back flat on the mat, we're going to extend both legs up into the air. Now, depending upon your hamstring, gluteal, and low back flexibility, your legs up in the air will be at different levels. For the beginner version of this exercise, we're going to move one leg at a time, keeping one up and lowering the other. Exhale as you lower and lift that leg back up. Inhale as you stop. Completing the correct number of sets and repetitions for each side. For the standard version of this exercise, a scissors exercise, you're going to be able to use your hands to guide your legs, switching mid-air, moving both legs at the same time. Keeping that lower back in contact with the mat at all times. For the advanced level of this exercise is a double leg lower. Notice that again my back is still flat against the mat, and with both legs extended, I'm going to slowly lower at the same time to the point where I can keep my back on the mat and then bring up. Inhale as you go down, exhale as you pull up. If I lower my legs too far, my back will arch and I will be unsupported and can do some serious damage to my lower back and rectus abdominis. Repeat the number of sets and repetitions as required for your exercise assignment. The sixth exercise in our series is a side plank lift. This is very similar to the side plank exercise that you did in the resistance training workout last week. You'll be doing the exercises on both sides, but I'm only going to demonstrate one side. The most modified version of this exercise is to have your knees down and your elbow down. Make sure that your knees are in the same plane as your chest, so it should be a nice flat line across the front of your body. Place your other hand up here on your hips, and you're going to simply lift and lower the hips off of the mat, keeping the body in a nice straight line. A more advanced version of this exercise is to extend the legs out but keep the arm on the elbow still, and again lifting and lowering. And the most advanced version of this exercise is to place the hand directly underneath the shoulder and the legs out, extended, hand on the hip, lifting and lowering. Making sure that the lift comes from the hips so there's only one bend in the whole body. The final two exercises in the core workout are good mornings and wood choppers. I'm going to show the very modified version of both of those exercises down on the mat first, because the full version of those exercises and advanced versions of those exercises are required to be standing. So for good mornings, the first exercise can be performed in a modified version on your knees by placing your hands behind your head. You're going to hinge forward all the way down to your forehead is to the mat, and then coming straight up. Again, we're coming up to that neutral position. We're not hyperextending our back. So down, exhale up. For the wood choppers, the modified version is also a kneeling version. You'll be doing this on each side, so make sure you know how many sets and repetitions you're to perform on each side. You're going to imagine that you're holding an object down to the outside of your knee, and you're going to watch the object as you rotate up and across your shoulder and then back down. Trying to keep your hips facing forward at all times as you rotate through the spine, and don't turn the whole body. Then repeat on the opposite side. The standing version of each of these exercises starts with the good mornings. Standing again with your hands behind your head, this time keeping your knees straight but soft. So I'm going to adjust this a little bit so you can see my knees a little bit better. You want to keep the knees so that there's a slight bend about this much in the knees so they're not locked out straight behind you. So keeping your knees soft, feet hip width apart, hinging at the hips and up. Notice that my hips come back to that neutral position each time. So my hips go back and up. For the wood chopper, you start in a standing position. Again, reaching to the outside of the foot this time and coming all the way up, keeping those hips facing forward. So as you come up, make sure that your hips do not rotate with the body. It's not a golf swing. And then repeating on the opposite side. So for a more advanced version of this exercise, we can stand on one leg. Reach to the outside of the opposite leg and up and down. And then repeat on the other side. Reaching to the outside of the straight leg first and then up and then down. Repeat the same number of sets and repetitions for both exercises on both sides if it's a single-sided exercise. And that is your last exercise in the core workout.